Hello everyone, welcome to our fifth lesson dedicated to materials. And today we will be testing 11 materials and we'll look at from what they are made. They are a preset, so we don't have to waste time on our lesson. You'll be mastering this during your homework by yourself. So let's look at the references of the materials we'll try to make. So chrome probably is the very simplest. It's reflective. All metals should generally have a black diffuse, but you should have a physically correct render, which V-Ray makes pretty hard to achieve. So sometimes we will be tricking our render, and just in order to get a nice kind of material visually. So steel, bronze, aluminum, gold, this kind of handle here. Okay, copper, silver, and a couple more materials that you'll be making by yourself. Okay, let's try going. So let's just call this material somehow chrome and set it to the render. Okay, here. Okay, and after it's done rendering, let's just to go through all of the settings and just compare it in different modes. Okay, Fong. It's in Fong here, and then we'll make it in Blinn and compare the results. So I believe this is a very satisfying result for chrome. Let's make a copy and see. So it's a black diffuse, reflect. It's in. Okay, let's just 190 here from 188. So it has the Fresnel reflections. Okay, 40 here. It's done so you have a bit less sensitivity toward Fresnel reflections. And you can just adjust the reflections due to the angle. Highlight glossiness is also available for us. Okay, long. Okay, let's see the other regimes. Okay, we'll just see what it looks like later on. After you're done experimenting, you might get something even cooler. Okay, let's do this one, change. Well, let's just check out will we have any difference. So after we've done the bricks, After we've done the blend, the shadows are a bit darker. So there isn't much of a difference. So I'll just keep it to the blend. Let's look at the next Chrome. Chrome 2. So the difference here. Okay, the gradient. So sometimes you need to use this just in order to trick 3D Max, because you might get not a very nice reflection. And in some specific reflections, you just kind of lose the material. So sometimes you have to compensate this through radiant ramp. So as you see here, it's not getting any reflections. You just have the gradient that is given reflected. So the surrounding part here is everything that is surrounding gets a black and white kind of color. So it's a pretty nice material you can use in interiors. I do use it quite often myself. So let's look at the steel. Let's look at the settings. We've set the diffuse a bit lighter. So we had a black diffuse everywhere previously. I've done it a bit less. Okay. So we have highlight glossy, subdivs, and all that stuff. Okay. There's no noise. So okay, I'll just render it. Okay, we have frontals. We have to increase how much it reflects closer to the edges. So these blue reflections here are external effects, and you can just adjust that with some HDRI. And you'll get the same colors here. So generally, all of the materials look very similar. So this material does take a bit more to render. 2 or 3 minutes. 32 subdivs. That's because of the subdiv amounts. So I wouldn't say just making this parameter and an over amount of global subdivs will be useful for you. So we got this all counted through. So let's continue here. And just look at the other material. So this doesn't take too much to count, and you get this kind of steel kind of material here, very smooth. Okay, you can make it more complex later on. Had some prints, like fingerprints on the material. So let's give it a try. Steel F here. Let's make it through blend material that we are already used to using. So, as you may have guessed, just put them up on a light material here. Just have to find a bitmap. Okay. Okay. We have this map here. It looks pretty much all right. So you see, we have to invert the map because it didn't go very well. So, okay. It seems to be a bit too much, overly strong. So let's, for some additional blend, just go here. Okay, make it black. Set it to 50. Make it a texture. So let's just kind of turn it around a bit. Okay, as you see, they are quite strong. So we need a more realistic picture a bit less defined. Let's make them even less. All of these things like these fingerprints, should be done very accurately. You don't really want them kind of screaming out of your picture. And it's done through minor adjustments like the reflection layer. Okay. Let's render this ball here. So, in the same way, you can make a kind of glass material like, or make, say, the drops using this place here. Just use it on steel, but But you can easily also make this kind of fingerprints on glass. Okay, just add some here. Okay. Or say you just want kind of a rugged material. So if you buy this, you can make some additional fingerprints. So you can use bump to add some additional visibilities to your fingerprints. Or you can say clean it up with the mask, or use map for it. So this is how we've got some fingerprints going. So let's look at a more complex material. So it imitates kind of a diagonally marked handle here. So let's try achieving that. Say if you've ever tried sports, you'll see it often on sports equipment. So let's just make a small part, and let's look at how I've achieved it. So it's done in several steps, and we'll look at the steps more closely. So it's going to take a while to render. So this seems to be a normal material. The outstanding parts are more bright, while the inner bend parts are have a bit of a used look to them. So to start off our material, our reference, we just have to look at it. Okay, we should look at a more of a polished material. Okay, make it a bit blacker. The one that's so parts of it are blacker because they are more touched, more grabbed. So first I created this material here, the material that looks like steel. And gave it a bit of highlight, glossy, and reflection. So first of all, I created the outer surface and the material that is going to be on the outstepping kind of parts. So I did the approximate material here, the material that is going to be the material we see on the ripples. Okay, so just don't forget about this. Here, I've used fong in the steel, and here I've used blin. The material will be in fong. So I've done some explicit mapping here. Okay, object on the noise. We have object on the noises. we've done 4 by 4 here. So if you look at it in a 1:1 scale, so you can just look at our main map. So I've done this to 45 degrees. Okay, so testing, I've done it 15 by 15. Okay, and done the first render. Okay, no bump and no nothing. Okay, let's just check this out here. So, this is the first render. Seems to be this. So, right now we're just making a base that will serve as something to enhance our material furtherly. So, we are bumping this map here. Okay. So we're doing these blacks. The blacks are going to be on the bottom when we bump. So if you want to take the instance from here, you'll need to invert it over here. Or invert the mix map and bump, set the bump to the lower. Or just change the parameters just as I did, black to white, like here. So what I did is I've added the tiles to the slot. Okay. Here. Made it here. 30. Set it to 30. Made it to 150. And I mixed our tiles to the noise. Just to add some additional some additional contrast texture. Did you see here? Okay, let's just mix this up here. Okay. So after we've done this kind of sketch that looks much like the material we desire, we add a map to reflection, and then I start working on the details like the scratches and all that stuff. So I added the map old copper bump for the reflection, and to get the material that we wanted to. It gave us some minor scratches. It gave us a bump. But we could add some extra bump to the map, but I wouldn't find that completely necessary. But this is the kind of material that you could be honestly going on forever about. There's also always some minor details that you might like to change. So let's check out what we've done. We've done the base, the second material, so when we get to the texture material that we want, we start adding the details, the scratches and all that stuff. So now we're doing some aluminum. So this is the kind of aluminum we want. Okay, so we see lines, some reflections, and the black. So that's what you can get out of a quick analysis of this material. So, and we'll add some fingerprints too. So since I didn't have a map that imitates those lines, I did it through a regular noise. So tiling. Okay, I just did the tiling and just spread it out. I've achieved these values through testing the materials and mixed it with another one. Okay, and these are the main moments of it. So let's see what we have on the diffuse. So I mixed it 50 to 50, I see 50-50. 50 of the 50 of the texture and 20 from the color we've set. So I've got this in a very experimental fashion, all this, as always. So I wanted the lines to be visible. Let's just check out what we are getting. So when you set the diffuse to higher values, you can see this effect. But it's very nice right now. So you might get too much lines at the higher diffuse values. This is very accurate. You don't have anything that kind of strikes you in the eye. Okay, you got your diffuse. So let's look, since you got the glossy. Reflect glossy here, okay. High glossiness isn't very similar to reflect glossiness. Okay, I just made it a bit more Fresnel IOR. It's relevant to how deep the reflections are. That, to my point of view, will give us a deeper feel to the material. So right here, it's not very hard to achieve. You just had to. It was a bit tricky to catch the maps on the diffuse. You just had to find the Fresnel IOR and catch the correct blicks and reflections. Otherwise, It wasn't very hard. So let's look at the maps. Let's reflections. Here you have where you have white. Got black here. You inverted the map. Instance copy. Okay. Glossy. And bump. Okay. So when I've cut the map to the red diffuse, I needed to outline it through some reflect, glossy, and a bit of bump. I had done some very minor adjustments. And these kinds of values are often helpful and give us a helpful result. So you can, and when you don't do these adjustments, so you get kind of an eye-hitting effect that doesn't look too nice. So what you might wish to work on is some reflections. So as you see here, our bump here gives some additional moments. Okay. We probably won't be looking at the fingerprints here because they have already been done on the stale. And this is the kind of material I have got. Okay, let's look at the next material. It will be, okay. So, some iron. Okay. I just set this press a bit less. Okay. And, the iron work doesn't really reflect all that much. So I did, mixed map 2. Mixed map, reflects. So first I tested the noise. And then I added the old copper bump. Okay, then I added some additional stuff and mixed it with the noise map. So there's 20 on the reflect. %, of the color will be from reflect. The glossy is a bit higher. Glossy map. And the glossies are a bit lower. They give us a kind of a wider blick. Okay, so slot and reflect glossiness. So reflect glossy. So I won't be rendering the whole ball in order to save time. You'll be doing this material yourself. It doesn't take too long to make. And this is the ironwork material you can get. So all ironwork materials that are made well give your interior a rather interesting look. It will give a good impression. since it consists of material testing. So when it's all done well, you do get an interesting result. Okay. It's not very hard, so let's get to the next material. Let's get to the gold. It's the most glossy. No, it's not the most glossy, it's the most, what would the correct word be? Okay. It has a more of a, glossy glance effect. So we've used fog for this. Diffuse black. And the material has a kind of a golden effect. So let's make a kind of a glossy gold here. So, okay. Let's make kind of a ring effect. Just look at this. Okay, it's kind of a bent material. You can use your own maps here for the gold material. So let's just cap it render. Okay, let's now that our picture is done, so you can have a look here. Everything's the same besides the map, reflex maps, and the glossy, and a bit more bump. You can just play around with it. But once again, you will be doing that during your homework. So I did the mix for two maps, and I want the reflections to be gold. And I've done it this way, but you might be doing this in Photoshop, but I prefer to do it here. So I've done by mixing. Okay. Map. Okay. So I've done a bit more reflexes. A bit more blacks on it, black dots. Then I added some glossy. So when it's white, a bit less glossy. When it's black, a bit more glossy. Okay. Okay, diffuse. I made it a bit brown rather than black, because black is an overly dark variation. So that's why. Okay, you can make it. So if you're willing to, you can make it a bit more complex. This way, you can add additional maps. So let's look at the copper material now. It's pretty much the same as gold, but the reflect color is rather different. It's a bit more red. Okay. It gives us some more red material. So this is the material we want. It's a bit more polished, not very touched, not that kind of, it doesn't have that used look to it. So the reflect color for metals, so if it's not steel or not some kind of color metal, so when we use colored metal, this reflect is very important for us. So while just changing the parameters, we can change gold to copper. So you can use get a lot of interesting stuff just by changing the parameters. Okay, you'll get the Fong. Okay, okay, let's make some other materials. Let's make some bronze and in the bronze helmet. Okay, just look at this. Look at what complexities we've got. So let's do some material, view, and just add it here. Okay, let's let it render. Okay, four materials. It's made of four materials, and that is three materials and two materials that are the same. Base material, additional material, and two later materials are used for the dirt, for the outer edges. They give us more of a polished kind of effect. Okay. Okay, and just look at it. Okay, and just look at how it renders and how it looks completely fully. Okay, so you can also try experimenting on your own with this view. So what would you do in your home if this were your homework? So it's going to render for about 6 minutes. Material, okay. So just look at what kind of we have. Okay, dirt. Okay. So sometimes it gets wider because you have two edges close. Okay, just wait a while. This is going to be the last material in our lesson because it's rather complex. And we didn't spend much time on didn't spend much time on the other materials. Say the chrome was insanely simple, just had a white reflex. And for materials on blend weren't also very complex. And they all looked quite nice. So testing these materials that we have in our lesson, and while watching, parallelly do these renders yourself, and then continue with your homework. Okay, so it's almost done rendering. I personally believe that the knowledge given up to now is enough for making absolutely any material. So, knowing some stuff you need in your previous lesson, or we've learned in our previous lesson, you will be easily add things like water drops or steam effects. Or you could make this something like fogged too. And we will be able to look at these materials here. So now we are able to compare. So this is, in the original picture, it has some blacker effects, just generally a darker color. But I'd suggest that this is easily done in Photoshop in a matter of minutes. But so to the base, I've took the gold material, but I've changed its diffuse map. It has no stitches, so it's used almost everywhere. Then I've used here. Okay, here it is. Just have a look at it. So we don't have much tiling here. The texture must okay. It gives us the main tone. So the helmet materials doesn't really have all that much reflections, so you just have all these glossy maps and stuff that used and the bump used. So by this I made the map. Then okay, and then we have a bit of a mix later on. So we have a stitchless map here, which to some extent looks like our main map that we have on our reference. So here's the same map we've done on the ordinary, just like in the gold, but I've changed the color. So it does make our material a bit more complex, and it gives us a generally very nice effect. So we do use some other maps later on. Okay. The Frenzel. Okay. Glossy. It does give us effects. So I've put 24 to the subs. And experimentally I put these parameters 0, 8, and 10 to be optimal. That's what I found them to be. Say you made a map, I wouldn't recommend you putting it all at once. So I believe you should catch one, render, catch second, render, and so on. So you just do it generally by iterations, step by step. I wouldn't recommend it do it once. So always do a test in your materials. So, and you'll get this kind of an algorithm of material creation. So when you're doing your homework, once again, I'll emphasize, just do step by step. Okay, diffuse. So you start with diffuse and you end with the bumps. So when I was making this material, I probably changed the maps about 1,000,000 times, and honestly, okay? And I've done a bit of a effect. Okay. Step by step. So that's the main method. Okay. So here we have very high effect parameters of 0.70 in the Fong because of how high their glossiness. Okay, and since we have 20 there, 0.8 is enough for that parameter. Since we have 20 here. And okay, 0.8. Okay. So first let's look at our other map. The second material is the material for the black parts, darker parts. So here it is, and it does look much like alike. So I mixed it with another map, stitchless map, that has this kind of view. So it's important to have these kinds of maps and find them. So make these kind of maps in your Photoshop yourself. We'll put some emphasis on that in some time. Or you can also always Google some maps that you personally find to be nice. So I had this one and I used it for the mix. I inverted it. So I've had the map and done it. Okay. So it's proportional. And this curve here tells us that I am making my texture lighter and the other texture is getting darker. So here we have the same material. I just changed the glossiness and all that, or those parameters, and made it a bit more dark and glossy. But once again, I've been talking so much about changing this stuff that you might try too hard. You shouldn't. So we already have this material here. So we have this value set here. It's not too bright. Let's just change how strong the reflect is. Could have made it a bit brighter. Okay, not that much bump here. So why is our bump so complex? Well, the material itself isn't easy. It's pretty hard to make. It has a lot of kind of roughest touched effects. And I wanted to highlight all of the maps that exist on the project. So let's say the maps, map 1, map 2 for the diffuse, this map here, the reflect glossiness map, and the map 4 on the dirt. So I just inverted the normals and there. So the 4 maps that I used, the ball map, the map here, the diffuse map, I ended up mixing them all, connecting them. Mix card here. So I connected them with the value of 20, and I had this very complex bump as a result. So the mix amount could be a bit more since it's barely visible, but I decided to keep it this way. So this is about it for material. Just change that to 2. So I did 2 dirts because 1 wasn't enough. So say your one map just doesn't get the job done, you can just duplicate, say an instance copy, like here, and you get the good result. It kind of enhances the effect. So it's black or white. Okay, that's what we get in the dirt. So I did this here, and this effect can be used several times. Seems to be all for this material. Another thing is, so you'll just need some advice on the homework. So it's going to be similar to the Chrome, your homework material. So this is, you're going to have to make a polished silver material and use some blend to make some dirt on it. So you'll have to kind of a kind of a stained effect on it too. Okay, and this one here is kind of glossy. So you also need to get this metal stain material made. You have to find the maps for it. Okay. So you'll get the stuff like the drawings on a detail. So, and it's not actually a drawing, it's kind of a cut. Cut in thing. So here, VRA dirt. Okay. We'll just introduce ourselves how to make this. It's okay. So I won't be changing much. VRA dirt. So check the map here. Best instance. White to black. Swap. Okay, make it a bit brighter here. Make a bump map. Okay, just get the same material, make it a bit more glossy, and a bit darker. And we'll turn off the high glossy. And get kind of a map for our picture. Let's find something appropriate. Sure. Well, this will do. Let's give it a material. So let's make it a bit more deliberate. And we'll have to invert it right now. Okay, we've got it. Let's make a copy of it. And put it on the bump. Instance here. Black to white. Okay, put it to the bottom. And put it to the instance. Okay. That seems to be about it. Just to put it over here, like a classical map. Okay, just looks how it looks like a first material. Very similar to what we've done on the silver works. So we got the full material, we got the full effect that it's cut. So I suggest you finding your own map that you'll spread. It can be some sort of writing that is barely readable. And it looks similar to here. This seems to be about it on our lesson. This seems to be all on our metal lesson. And this knowledge should be enough for doing your homework. So don't be too slow with your homework. And then we'll start off making the cloth. So you have the process work on the forum, and feel free to ask any questions. Thank you.